When the Bulls traded for Josh Giddey last summer, executing what is now widely a controversial and heavily debated trade amongst Bulls fans, in which the Bulls traded arguably their most valuable trade asset at the time in Alex Caruso in exchange for Josh Giddey and only Josh Giddey. Despite the Thunder holding a mountain of draft picks and making it known that they didn't really value Josh Giddey as highly as some did. But regardless of where you stand on the return from that trade, who won the trade, who didn't, I still personally think both teams got what they wanted in that deal, and the trade itself wasn't as egregious as a lot of Bulls fans, including members of the media, are making it out to be. That said, I think the Bulls' biggest issue with the exchange of this trade is that they would immediately be under the clock, under the gun, and handing Giddey a big contract rather than taking on a cost-controlled asset that still had more years on their rookie scale deal, which the Bulls could have gotten for a player like Caruso given his salary. And because the Bulls and Giddey did not reach an agreement on an extension before this past season started, which was to be expected, he is now set to become a restricted free agent this summer, where Giddey is able to go out and get offers from other teams, and the Bulls have the ability to match any offer he obtains in order to retain him. Now, this of course is going to be one of the biggest topics or transactional moves for the Bulls this offseason. It's Josh Giddey's extension and what they're going to do with Coby White. And because I've seen so many differing opinions and widely different views on how much Josh Giddey should get paid or even paid at all, in other words, the Bulls should just look to sign and trade him or let him walk. So in this video, I'm here to talk about the mechanics and economics behind Giddey's potential contract and why he absolutely will be getting paid handsomely this summer. And yes, it will be by the Bulls. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Before I continue on with the video, a big shout out to the sponsor of this video, Factor. Now, as you guys can imagine, creating content not only for this channel, but my second channel, the NBA channel, takes a lot of time to record, edit, and put everything together, along with my day job, my kids. My time to cook is minimal to non-existent. That's why I need something fast, fresh, that isn't going to break the bank to continue on with my work, and that's honestly why I love Factor. Factor takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door with over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and more. The meals are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. And hey, when things get hectic and you need to adjust your plan, Factor is flexible. Change your order up every week with plans from 4 to 8 meals per week, or even pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. And guys, they're offering viewers of this channel an exclusive offer. Head over to factor75.com or click the link below to use the code 50BullsCentral to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50BullsCentral at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And hey, let me know what meals you guys end up choosing. Now, for those that follow the Bulls closely, you know Josh Giddey had a rocky start to his tenure with the organization, where he wasn't producing, or I shouldn't say wasn't producing, but wasn't providing positive impact when he was on the floor. The Bulls had substantially lower net ratings when he was on the court, and while Giddey's overall numbers were okay, his box plus minus and on-off numbers remained in the negative. And it was in large part due to Giddey's horrendous defense, but also his high rate of turning the ball over and also his inability to finish at the rim. All things we knew were problems from his time in OKC, and was a big reason why the Thunder ultimately moved on from him, because he had proven to be a liability in that playoff series against the Mavs where they were eliminated. Some may not remember, but there was a stretch where Billy Donovan was opting not to close out games with Josh Giddey and instead was going with guys like Ayo and Patrick Williams and even Lonzo Ball if he hadn't reached his minutes restriction. And during that time, you had a lot of people saying, well, what does this mean for Josh Giddey and his long-term viability with this team if he's too much of a liability to even close out games? But in the second half of the season, and this was especially the case after the Bulls traded Zach LaVine, something changed for Josh Giddey to where he finally looked comfortable out there and started playing some of the best basketball of his career. He started shooting the ball much better, where he shot a ridiculous 45% from three after the All-Star break. He was much more effective in driving to the basket and finishing through contact. He would go 50% from the field post All-Star break and 80% from the free throw line on the highest volume of his career from the line. A true shooting percentage of 62%, which was the highest he's ever had at any stretch in his career. He would average 21, 11, and 9 post All-Star break. And wouldn't you know it, the Bulls would have their best stretch of the season in actually playing winning basketball. Giddey would ultimately finish the season with the highest box plus minus of his career, the highest value over replacement player of his career, and even a positive net rating. Now, yes, I know everyone likes to say, hey, take March and April basketball with a grain of salt, which there is some truth to that, and I do agree we need to be able to see Giddey producing like that consistently for an entire season. But I also think people downplay that the Bulls, they actually did play a lot of teams that were trying and fighting for playoff positioning, and the teams that were either undermanned because they were injured or outright tanking, the Bulls took care of business against those teams, and Josh Giddey was one of the centerpieces in getting them there. So I won't deny that the competition was at times watered down, but they also played some tough games against tough competition, and Giddey consistently produced and played exceptionally well during that time period. Like, say what you will about this team, but the Bulls and their play post All-Star break was some of the best and most exciting basketball we've seen from this team since the beginning of the 2021 season before Lonzo Ball got injured. Now, the point of me going through all of that was to add the context around how Giddey started and closed out the season and how it impacts his overall contract extension and what his market value will be going into the summer. Now, of course, the number we keep hearing of what's been reported and what Josh Giddey is seeking in his next contract is 5 years, $150 million, which comes out to about $30 million annually. Now, when you hear that figure, you initially get hit with some sticker shock because $30 million annually normally is reserved for players who were at all-star caliber level type guys. And even as good as Josh Giddey was down the stretch, a $150 million contract seems like a big overpay for a player that still has a lot of flaws to his game and still has a lot to prove. Most importantly, can he contribute and play at the highest level in the playoffs? And while I still maintain that paying Giddey in the $30 million a year range is a bit of an overpay, especially when the Bulls have the most leverage in this situation, with only one team being the Brooklyn Nets that actually have the cap space to sign him to that amount. But when you peel things back a bit and compare Giddey to his peers, as well as comparing his upcoming pay relative to the NBA's increasing salary cap, it's not as bad as some fans are making it out to be. Now, let's say for a moment Giddey gets his 5-year, $150 million contract that he's looking for. The Bulls, they give him that. Well, put aside the negotiation and the Bulls' leverage for a moment. Strictly looking at the contract in a vacuum at $30 million a year, which we don't know if the contract would be front-loaded, back-loaded, or flat for the full 5 years, but let's just call it $30 million for the full 5 years flat. The NBA's salary cap next season is projected to be at $154.6 million, which is a 10% increase from last season. At $30 million a year, that's about 19% of the team's overall cap in the first year of his contract. For context, a max contract is usually 25% of the team's salary and up to 30% at the supermax level. Giddey would be at 19%. And as the salary cap increases year over year, which it's expected to increase by 10% for the foreseeable future, that contract, at least as it relates to the team's overall cap, will become more and more favorable over time. And by the final year of his deal, again, assuming the contract remains flat, you're talking about an annual salary that is very team-friendly, assuming Giddey continues to improve as a player and also the fact that he'll be in his prime at that time at age 27. If Giddey was looking for a max contract, or say the Bulls were considering paying him the max, yeah, then we would have problems. And giving a max contract would be a disaster for the Bulls and put them right back into a situation they found themselves in with Zach LaVine with little flexibility to get out of it. Now, you also have to consider Giddey's value and also what his expectations are relative to his peers. When you look at Giddey's draft class alone, the guys that were drafted ahead of him have all gotten paid. Cade Cunningham, max, $224 million deal, which is now near $270 million as he qualifies for the Supermax, having made an All-NBA team. Evan Mobley, max. Scotty Barnes, max. All deals over $220 million. Jalen Green, 3 years, $106 million, which equates to $35 million annually. And then Jalen Suggs, he got the contract Giddey is seeking. 5 years, $150 million. Like, yes, those first 4 draft picks in 2021, I won't deny they're all better than Josh Giddey, although I do think there could be an argument made that Giddey is maybe more reliable and smarter on the court than a player like Jalen Green. But Jalen Suggs, while him and Giddey are very different players, I don't think you can say with a certainty that Suggs is worth more money than Josh Giddey. Maybe right now you could say Suggs is more valuable because of how much he means to the Magic and the level of impact he brings on the defensive end, but from a long-term perspective, is Suggs worth more money than Josh Giddey? Suggs, like Giddey, equally has his flaws to his game, very susceptible to turnovers, inconsistent shooter, isn't a playmaking guard. He's a dog on defense, which Giddey is not, but my point is, Suggs is just as much of a flawed player as Josh Giddey is. But not only that, Suggs is much more injury prone, whereas Giddey, thus far anyway, has been more durable. Now, when I saw the Magic give Suggs that contract, I immediately thought it was a gross overpay, which I still kind of do, but regardless of whether we think it's a big overpay or not, It set the market for what you can expect for players at his caliber, and Suggs' contract absolutely will be a factor in determining Josh Giddey's worth. Let's also not forget that Franz Wagner got a max contract as well, which is still hilarious to me. But again, just goes back to further setting the market for this draft class of 2021. Now, when it comes to the Bulls and how they should handle Giddey's impending free agency, what I think the Bulls should do versus what they will do is different. But what I think the Bulls should do is let Giddey test the market, let the market dictate his value, let him get offers, which again, aren't going to be that great because teams don't have the cap space this summer to sign him. And when he sees there really isn't much of a market for him to get a massive payday, then the Bulls are able to demonstrate they have leverage and they give Giddey a sizable contract, one that he deserves, but is also fair market value. Like, I'm not in the camp of lowballing the guy just because you can. And I see a lot of fans and even some of the media saying the Bulls should offer him $18 million a year and say take it or leave it, because you also have to remember the human element in all of this, which I've talked about before. As much as we view these guys like commodities/assets, they're still human beings at the end of the day. And as much as this is a business, there is also the relationship building side of the business. And the last thing you want to do is piss off one of your employees by giving them a lowball offer just because you can, and then run the risk of that player being jaded, disgruntled, and then not really wanting to be a part of the team. But then also, other players around the league, they'll remember that. They'll remember that the next time they think about coming to play for Chicago as the team that screws over their players. So while the Bulls will have leverage this offseason with Giddey and should use their leverage to their advantage by not negotiating against themselves like they did with Vucevic, Patrick Williams, even Zach LaVine, but they can't lowball the guy either. That's just bad business. Now, for me personally, I would much rather see Giddey getting something in the range of $25 million a year that offers you a bit more flexibility, not only in this upcoming season to use more of your mid-level exception, but also beyond when the salary cap increases, particularly this summer of 2026, when the Bulls are expected to have a ton of cap space. And because no other team outside of the Brooklyn Nets can offer Giddey that amount, if the Bulls are smart, which, let's be real, they haven't really shown that in recent years, then something in the ballpark of 5 years, $125 million is achievable and more palatable for the Bulls to absorb on their payroll. We'll find out soon enough, though, what Giddey's contract is going to look like come July. I would love to hear what you guys think, though. You let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.